liturgy is in your book, but if you find yourself called to use the screens for liturgy, try to use the screen across from where you're sitting. I've watched, and what happens otherwise is you all turn outwards and end up with your backs towards each other. So try to turn inwards over the course of the service, and that way you can see the liturgy and be leaning in towards the center of our congregation all at the same time.
So the other thing is that it seems that each week we have something new to celebrate, that we're back, that we're, for the first time, we up here, because we're far enough away, can take off our masks, and we're masks optional in the sanctuary now. Everywhere, it's like we're closer and closer. Tonight we have a big announcement. This is something that has not happened in a very long time, and lest we forget at the end of the service, we will say it now. We have an Oneg Shabbat downstairs in the Oneg room waiting for you. And for those of you on Zoom, and we are seeing you on the screen, we are so glad you're here, and on Facebook and YouTube and on the Temple website. So glad to be with you on this Friday night, and we'll hope you'll get a little nosh for yourself after the service as well. So we're going to begin with a psalm of joy, page 87 in your prayer books, or up here on the screen. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha. Let us come before God with our joy, with our singing. And no matter what state you find yourself in tonight, whatever place your heart is in, hopefully that little pocket of joy can come forth too, along with everything else. Ivdu et Hashem. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Bo lefanav birnana, lefanav birnana. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Bo lefanav birnana, lefanav birnana. Yalalai, yalalai. And that is the whole song. And just feel that toe tap and rhythm in your feet, and maybe get a little more comfortable wherever you are seated. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Bo lefanav birnana, lefanav birnana. Let's do it again. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, Bo lefanav birnana, lefanav birnana. Yalala, 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 with that theme of joy, of the power of us coming back together in live community once again. We are so happy to call up the Rootman-Sylvan family to come light our Shabbos candles for us. Lee is becoming B'nai Mitzvah tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. and to celebrate, they are bringing their light into the sanctuary. And to find these blessings, please turn to page 1 in your prayer book.
Do you have family members up there? We have family joining us. How wonderful. So you're just Lee or whoever? Yeah, you're becoming B'nai Mitzvah, so you get to light.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehad lekner shel Shabbat. Mazel tov to you guys, to all of you, and really to our whole community. When there's a B'nai Mitzvah, it's just pure joy. We continue on page 2, the 4th song down. How good it is to be together. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov, hinei ma tov, ya la la, ya la 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 la. Hinei ma tov, hinei ma tov, ya la la, ya la 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 la. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov, hinei ma tov, ya la la, ya la 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 la. Hinei ma tov, hinei ma tov, ya la la, ya la 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 la. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. So you can put your prayer books down for a moment. And Irina, if you want to come on up, we have a really special opportunity tonight to do what we do best in this community, which is to get to know each other better through our stories, through our experiences. And Irina has offered tonight to speak to us. And I know you're going to cover so much tonight, but Irina grew up in Russia, and Val, where is Val? Is Val? There you are, Val. And Val, her husband grew up in Ukraine, and it has been, Misha, also, we know that you grew up in Russia as well, and this has all been in our hearts so much. And so, Irina, to get to hear from you tonight is such a treat. And we just, on behalf of us all, I thank you for sharing yourself with us tonight.
Thank you, Rabbi Cari, for encouraging me to speak or hearing me out.
Well, yeah, we'll get that. Hold. Irina, just start one more time. We just get to speak right into that mic.
Bring her louder. Thank you. Okay, you can try again.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Rabbi Cari, for encouraging me to speak and for supporting me and my family in these difficult times. I'm not a political scientist or a historian, and it's not an informative talk at all. There's tons of information out there about what's happening so in Ukraine, and anybody can do their own research. I'd rather share my personal feelings and reactions associated with these developments, perhaps maybe set some context around them. So on February 24th, Russian troops have invaded a neighboring country, Ukraine. This aggression was unprovoked and not caused by any threat to Russian security. My world has turned upside down, and my family has been following this news almost nonstop. As unhealthy as doom scrolling is, distraction has been impossible for us. The whole world, of course, is shocked by this act of aggression. And our family took the news very personally. As Beth has mentioned, I was born and raised in Moscow, Russia. My husband Val grew up in Kiev, Ukraine. We're both Jewish. Our ancestors lived in the Vale of Settlement in different parts of modern Ukraine, which was then called Russia. And at the time of our childhood, these places were both parts of the former Soviet Union, and they were more homogeneous than in recent times. Yes, Ukraine was slightly more anti-Semitic, and some people spoke Ukrainian in the western parts, but in Kiev, where Val grew up, it was mostly Russian speaking, and we grew speaking Russian, probably reading same books, watching same movies, and living in similar looking ugly Soviet style apartment buildings. Val, and I've never been to Kiev, and I've barely visited Ukraine ever. Val and I met in Boston about 25 years ago. We moved to the US a long time ago, and lucky not to have any immediate family left in either Ukraine or Russia, but we do have relatives and friends. But even without super close ties, the pain is real and feels too close to home. In fact, Val knows well the locations where some of the bombs are landing now, and naturally that makes it exponentially more traumatic. Last time I visited Moscow, Russia was 6.5 years ago for the funeral of my grandmother. And one of the early thoughts that came to my mind after February 24th was, thank God she has not lived to see this tragedy unveiling now. The same holds true for both of my grandfathers who passed before her and who fought in the Soviet army together with Ukrainians against the Nazi Germany in World War II, the real Nazis, not the made up Ukrainian Nazis Russian propaganda has invented. Val's grandfather was killed in that war. His family barely escaped imminent death. My last surviving grandmother, who once visited this wonderful community, remembers how traumatizing it was to flee her home as a refugee. And all these personal family histories make looking at crimes against humanity committed by Russia now more painful, and looking at the refugees and those poor Ukrainian people fleeing their homes with nothing and their whole lives and houses destroyed. Of course, war against Ukraine is a fact of a single lunatic who has lost touch with reality and is obsessed with rewriting history. But for that lunatic to be successful, many things have had to go wrong for an extended period of time. Recently, I have been trying to analyze what has been leading to where we are now. A few experts have predicted the actual war, but there have been warning signs. Crack on democracy and free press, creation of a police state, and highly effective propaganda. Unlike Ukraine, with vibrant political life recently, Russia in recent years has been turning more and more visibly towards the past. And there has been some cognitive dissonance, which I felt the last time I visited, which was right after the annexation of Crimea. Because on the one hand, there was Soviet-led propaganda, and on the other hand, there was vibrant cultural life, there was consumerism, and everybody knew about exuberant lifestyles of oligarchs, whose yachts are being luckily confiscated right now. Propaganda in Russia has invented a parallel reality first and then started believing in it themselves, which was so hard for many people to understand because, again, I only briefly visited, but looking at that, like, who would ever listen to that? Like that seems like a joke, but it worked. Way too many people have been brainwashed, and there are way too many similarities with Nazi Germany. And the rhetoric, the symbols, it's a half of swastika. That is even disgusting to look at it. And there's zombie meetings with people, some willingly, some forcefully attending, about between 100,000 and 200,000 last Friday, I think. And fun fact, at that meeting, some of the independent journalists noticed that Putin was wearing a designer coat that cost about 10,000 euros. So there's still that dissonance happening, and people are completely choosing to ignore it, or not just following, not staying away. Now, of course, the main priority is the focus to stop the suffering of Ukrainian people, and everybody is praying that it will end soon. I'm not going to go into military options, such as closing the sky, which on the one hand can stop the suffering, or on the other hand, it might start the World War III. I do not have answers, and nobody knows how this will end. At the same time, the whole world is praying for the fastest death of one individual. His demise will lead to chaos and potential violence in Russia, but there is no hope for the country otherwise. And hopefully a new Nuremberg or Hague tribunals are on the horizons. We'll see how that works out. It is hard to understand what's going on inside Russia from afar, even for me, who have lived there for long periods of time. While much of the population is considered to be supporting the special military operation, it is forbidden to call it war there. More than 15,000 people have been arrested for publicly expressing their opposition. Repressions are on the rise. There's censorship everywhere. Facebook and Twitter have been blocked, and they're considered an extremist organization, together with Navalny's organization. But there are VPNs out there, so people who want to have access to information, they still can. Many choose not to, or they're just more comfortable being subject to propaganda, or continuing to live their semi-comfortable life and just not thinking about the consequences. So YouTube is being blocked. There's a wave of immigration happening at the same time from Russia, people running away from Putin and the regime. And so for many, the war was the red line. So there are estimates of about 100,000 people, nothing compared to 3 million of Ukrainian refugees, but still it's hard to judge. But my personal experience, I contacted some of my friends when that started, and at first I was very angry and astonished. Why are they not protesting? But the fear is real, and it's much easier to be brave from afar. So now I'm feeling gentler to the ones that are smart enough to realize the magnitude of the catastrophe. But I have no patience for those who are still in denial. Even though one of my very close friends from college said, well, your text just upsets me too much. I know she's the head of the household, she has her child to care for, but that just didn't settle well with me. Again, I'm trying not to judge. So economic collapse for Russia is imminent, and all the experts agree in that, even though people on the ground might not realize the full extent just yet. The sanctions are working, and in fact, Russia, I think, is now the most sanctioned country in the world, surpassing North Korea and Iran. That doesn't affect Putin personally, but it will probably ruin the economy, which is a good message, but part of me feels sorry for the whole country, because that's punishing everybody, and even people who protested against Putin or do not support this war. And my belief is people who do not want to express their opinions now, they're just afraid, or do not know the whole magnitude of what is happening because they choose not to VPN, they don't have access to information. Nobody in their right mind would enjoy watching people just like them being killed and their lives destroyed. That just against human nature. At the same time, collective punishment is a real life phenomenon happening now. Musicians, scientists, and athletes are banned from international arena. I sometimes feel uncomfortable speaking Russian in public because everything Russian is toxic now. It's associated with Putin's crimes. But I also, I personally, I understand the reasons for that, and that will pass. I hope once we know what's happening next. For example, it was probably very toxic to be a German in the mid 1900s, but now my best friend is German. Even though my grandparents thought about Germans, there's hope there if we make it there. But right now there are few reasons to be optimistic. My prediction is as good as anybody else's. Russia is a nuclear power and it possesses biological weapons as well. So who knows? But instead of waiting for the world to end, many are donating resources to help Ukraine, and a lot is needed now. Even more will be needed when this nightmare is over. So I'm just hoping we'll pray together today to hoping that this nightmare will be over sooner and we'll start rebuilding this world. And unfortunately, the lives that are lost there are lost, and there's so much trauma that will be going around for a long time. But it is the world we live in, and there's nothing to go backwards 1 month and write a different scenario, unfortunately. And thank you for listening.
There's no hug more healing than that hug.
And it's wonderful to have Isaac and Naomi here with us, and Suzal and Beth's children. Thank you for those powerful words and sharing.
Irina, you so clearly spoke the chaos that you, your family, your friends, this world have been pulled into in this month. And because it is your family and Val, your family, and the streets you walked when you grew up, and I understand maybe even the building you grew up in was affected. It was possible. It's hard. They all look the same, so who knows? To hear from you, to have you give voice to what I think so many of us have felt when we read this news, is one of the acts of communal strength that offers hope that you were speaking about at the end. You know, that generosity that we have seen in response to the world, to the giving of the Ukrainian people, the funds and the support and all that is necessary. And you spoke of that generosity, and you offered that same generosity to us tonight by sharing your experience, because that takes bravery and vulnerability and openness in a room full of people, 99% of whom you can't even see their faces right now. And yet you did. And that offers me hope. And this place, this gathering, coming together on a Friday night where we have a custom of hearing stories and of making meaning from those stories and making collective meaning from those stories, that gives me hope as well. And there is a prayer vigil being organized by the interfaith community on Wednesday to mark the month, just over the month that it will have been since the war was launched, as you spoke about. And the ministers, mostly ministers, let's face it. I'm the rabbi, Beth the cantor, but mostly ministers in our interfaith organization. We're speaking about the why of gathering. Why gather? Why now? What do we want to say? How do we highlight this place of pain when there is pain all over this world, right? When our attention can easily be refocused at any time and should be focused equally on the people of Ukraine and the Uyghurs and what's happening in Armenia and the war in Yemen, and how do you hold it? And Irina, you spoke so clearly of the chaos, that feeling of I can't look away and I don't know what my looking does at the same time. But this week's Parshat Shmini, offers me a little comfort, and I want to share it with you in the hope that it comforts you too. An initial reading of this Parsha suggests an awful lot of attention to the detail of animal sacrifice in a way that is pretty uncomfortable in its detail. And one finds oneself wondering, is my time up? Luckily, it's my father-in-law, so he can say yes. And I find I've never had somebody set off their timer for me, Charlie. That's impressive. We'll talk about it tomorrow. It's fine. And I find myself wondering as I read this description, is it necessary? I mean, even if you want to tell people they want to do this religious sacrifice, is this detail necessary? And Rabbi Jessica Schimberg offered a teaching this week that I want to share with you all, because I think it explains why that text is necessary and also frames for us what happens as we move into our service. Rabbi Schimberg taught that living in increasingly chaotic and uncertain times, I notice how grounding ritual is each time I immerse in it. Even so, it is tempting to turn away from that which is slow and deliberate and engage in the more rapid fire and ever-ending fire hose of information, work, and entertainment, anything that can serve as a distraction. Parshat Shmini, the ritual is methodical, purposeful, and collaborative. If that's not a description of what we do in here together on Friday nights, I'm not sure what is. Methodical, purposeful, collaborative. And so, as we turn to these prayers of Shabbat, which we are going to allow to hold us in some extended form, moving prayer to prayer, we invite you to find that which you are seeking, to find in our methodical, purposeful, and collaborative prayer strength and conviction, to find the inner resources you're afraid you may have lost, and the places of hope that we all need. Come, friends, let us greet Shabbat together. Lecha Dodi is on page 11 and 12.
Lechan Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lechan Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. בתחילה לך דודי לך דודי לקראת התחלה ונשמה נקבלה לך דודי לקראת התחלה ונשמה נקבלה התעוררי קימה עורר קומי אורי 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 שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך דודי לך דודי לקראת התחלה ונשמה נקבלה לך דודי לקראת התחלה ונשמה נקבלה בואי שלום עטרת בלב גם בשמחה ובצהלה טוב אמונה עם סגולה בואי כלה לך דודי לך דודי לקראת התחלה ונשמה נקבלה לך דודי לקראת התחלה ונשמה נקבלה.
When a person enters the sanctuary, I'm going to ask you to remain standing for a moment. When a person enters the sanctuary for the first time after a loss, we stand in acknowledgement to offer our whole selves as best we can and say, we stand alongside you. Debbie, we are so aware of your presence here this evening. Your sister is standing alongside you, I believe, and I'm so aware of the two of you, and that you have just said goodbye to your beloved father. And so we want to offer you these words of the tradition, words that tell you that we know you are in need of comfort, and that we hope to be one of the places where you find that comfort. These words can be found on the bottom of page 12 in your prayer books. Please join me. Hamakom Yenachem Etchem B'toch Sha'ar Avlei Zion Yerushalayim. May God's presence comfort you among all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem.
Continue standing in body or in spirit on page 15. And Lee, we are delighted to invite you up to lead us in the Chatzi Kaddish tonight.
Can I take off my mask? If you're comfortable, but you don't have to.
Yitkada veyitkada shemei Rabba.
Amen.
Ve'alam divarach hirute ve'alech malhute
V'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael Bagala bagala uvizman kariv ve'immeru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach le'alma le'almaya yitbarach
Yitbara ve'yishtaba ve'yitpar ve'yitromam ve'yitnase ve'yithadar ve'yitale ve'yithala shemei dekudisha richu le'ela mimkom birhata ve'shirata tushbechata ve'nechemata Da'iram be'alma ve'imaru. Amen.
turn to the words of Baruch Hu, dear one, page 16 in that far right column in the bold print right in the middle. Baruch Hu, dear one, Shekhinah, holy name. When I call on the light of my soul, I come home. Baruch Hu, dear one, Shekhinah, holy name. When I call on the light of my soul, I come home. Baruch Hu, dear one, Shekhinah, holy name. When I call on the light of my soul, I come home. And if you are growing weary of standing, please feel free to sit down. We turn to the words of Ahavat Olam. In this interpretation of Ahavat Olam, we are loved by an unending love. We are loved by unending love, an unending love. We are loved by unending love, an unending love. We are embraced by arms that find us, even when we are hidden from ourselves. We are touched by fingers that soothe us, even when we are too proud for soothing. We are counseled by voices that guide us, even when we are too embittered to hear. We are loved by unending love, an unending love. We are loved by unending love, an unending love. We are supported by hands that uplift us, even in the midst of a fall. We are urged on by eyes that meet us, even when we are too weak for meeting. We are loved by unending love, an unending love. We are loved by unending love, an unending love. Embrace, touch, soothe, and counsel. Ours are the arms, the fingers, the voices. Ours are the hands, the eyes, the smiles. We are loved by an unending love. We are loved by unending love, an unending love. We are loved by unending love, an unending love. Boy, that felt unusually good to sing those words tonight. It's almost as if I could feel us just nurturing those seeds and feeling how much we are all in need of that embrace. And so we turn to the words of the Shema, acknowledging the interdependence, the oneness, the unity, though it may seem that we are so divided. May we hear in, listen in to that oneness.
We invite you to rise in body or in spirit, as is your custom.
ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד.
You may be seated. We continue with the Ve'ahavta, the acts of love and compassion that are a response to the unity of all life. We'll chant the first paragraph of page 18, but put your finger in page 20. We'll jump directly to the second paragraph of page 20.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Continue at the bottom of page 21.
Realizing that we are 3 weeks from the first night's Seder, and Mi Chamocha speaks to that moment, to this time as we begin the preparations toward the season of our liberation. And as we do the call and response Mi Chamocha setting, I invite you to see how much spaciousness you can create for yourself. There is no doubt we have all been in very tight spaces, very confined spaces. And what might this Passover season mean to you as we begin to taste some seeds of liberation and some seeds of confinement as well? So see where it lives in you tonight. Mi Chamocha, who is like you?
Turn to page 25 as we prepare to enter the Amidah, the series of prayers at the heart of our ritual this evening. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit, as is your custom.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot Ve'imahot Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem Leman Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechaye HaKol berachamim rabim Somech noflim ve'rofeh cholim Umatir asurim Umekayem emunato Lishenei afar Michamocha ba'al gevurot Umido melach, melech mimit umechayeh, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman atal hachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hakol, atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, Ukedoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha Selah. Baruch Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. Turn to page 99. Pray that these things never end. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol vehayam, rishrush shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam, hachol vehayam, rishrush shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam. O Lord, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. We turn to the Mishaberach on page 130, truly a prayer of the heart. And for those of you on Zoom and on Facebook, we invite you to put the names of those you are praying for healing for in the chat. And after we read the names of who we are praying for as a community, you each will be invited to add a name as well here in the sanctuary, or names. And as a community, we pray for the healing of Anya Kabel, Naomi Fisher, for Carol and Hal Ober, Sarah Kianowski, David Drazen, Robin Vogel, Erwin Lebo, Jean O'Connell, Larissa Schmilo, Rhonda Barbado, Talia, for Liliana Walheim Martinez and Linda Echt, Russell Noelty, Marion Lipson, Jack Landers, Jeff Bray, Angie Silver, Judy Z, Wayne Hoffman, Ed Snow, Benny Norton, for Jane Arnold, Marla Weiner, Neil Albert, for Roberta Lasky and Debbie Sachs-Buteau, Fred Moses, for Kathy Grossman, for Adam Gelb, Joyce, Roger Landay, Tori Macia, for Stanley Roth, and for Bob Ruxin, for Patty Richard, Diana Sanders, Harry Minko, Joyce and David Adamson, Tom Alexander, Susan Zimmerman Inney, Neil Daniels Midman, for Harriet Levy, Ann Pillow, Judy Donaldson, Norman and Fran Waxler, Sue Boardman, Nancy Alpert, Debbie Gilman, Jennifer Chase, for Ellen Lee, Vicki Oman, Barbara Kulanane, Richard and Joan Richmond, for Ayelet Bat Chava Hirsch Shmuel, for Nancy Lazaro Lieber, and for Kathy Nath. If you would like to add a name, please raise your hand. I'd be honored to call on you, Naomi.
Eliahu Quadesh and Peter Costanza.
Tanya Katz and Olga Towers. Valentine and Renee Hackett. Talia Shepard. Jim Stafford. Television.
For all of these names, for all of the places in the world, for all of the people in the world where healing is so needed, let us send this prayer out. In the far right column of page 130. Sheberach avoteinu mikol habracha ve'imoteinu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imoteinu v'kol habracha le'avoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Continue turning to page 90. The words Ozi v'Zimrat Yah. Third song down. We call for sources of strength, when we can't quite define or name where that source comes from. We call Ozi v'Zimrat Yah.
Ozi v'Zimrat Yah, vayehi li lishu'ah. Ozi v'Zimrat Yah, vayehi right, let's make it around. It sounds beautiful. Switch your palm. All right, one last switch. Sing it out. I don't know when I'm going to stop just feeling the joy of harmony and rounds once again live and of Zoom and
Hopefully
Facebook.
never.
Hopefully never, but it feels like so new every time. And Facebook and Zoom people, we are feeling your spirit too on these rounds. You're contributing and we're feeling you. We turn to our Aleinu for this evening on page 42.
Oh, see, this is the prayer for me, that we have to be in the sanctuary, that I feel differently in the sanctuary. This version of Aleinu, where we call this to each other. And for all of these months, I have been imagining that my voice is Sandy's Joe's voice, I have to say, and I sound way better in that version of this prayer. But this prayer for me, to hear the fullness of the sound, is such an incredible joy. We invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we move into these concluding prayers.
Seated. We turn to the words of Mourner's Kaddish on page 44, inviting those on Zoom and Facebook to add in your sights of dearly beloved people whom you're feeling in your heart tonight. And tonight, Debbie, and I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting your sister's name, Susanna. Debbie and Susanna, we are so glad you are in the sanctuary here with us tonight. And of course, we are thinking of your entire family as we remember your father, Henry Salvos, and the beautiful words you shared with us so that we could let the community know about his life. We remember tonight Robert P. Fletcher. And in this time of Shloshim, these 30 days, we are remembering Steve Betcher's brother, Don Betcher, David Aptaker's mother, Betty, and Joel Candel's sister, Janet. And tonight is the yard site of Anna Wexler, Reva Shapiro's beloved mother, of Rochelle Kianowski, Sandy Jo's aunt, and of her mother, Toby Malman. We're remembering tonight Keith Alexander, beloved son of a raven, Stephen Alexander of blessed memory, and Jerry Rubin, father of Julie Goldberg. This is his 6th yard site already. We remember Malcolm Weber. And in this year of memory, we remember Gladys Schuker and Roberta Lipperman, Michael Slonim, Stuart Fay, Al Levin, Claude Lieber, Ruth Sipperstein, and Ken Blumberg. And if there are people you are remembering tonight, yard sites, or just close memories, please raise your hand. We'd be honored to call on you. Yeah, Marion. David.
My father, Arthur Clay.
For all of these names, for all those who live on in our hearts, we rise as a community of memory, in body or in spirit.
Page 44, we unite in prayer. Yitgadal ve'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach yirtei ve'amlich malchutei, ve'chayecho nuvyomecho, uv'chayei lechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach, le'olam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudesha brichu le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru amen. May the one who makes peace in the heavens make peace for us, for all Israel, for all who dwell on earth. To which we all say,
Amen.
You may be seated.
Just a few announcements. Irina, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. We just want to extend a mazel tov to Lee and to their family. 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, Lee becomes B'nai Mitzvah. And here's something of this time. Lee's family joined Shir Tikvah during COVID. And so, I think this is fair to say, you guys don't really know anybody because we have not been in this building. So make sure you introduce yourselves to them. They are very nice people, and we're so glad you joined this community. There is Torah study tomorrow morning at 10:30. And excitingly, game night right here in the building at 6:30 p.m. Tomorrow night. And anyone over 13 is most welcome to come. There's board games, there's snacks. But if you are under 18, please come with a chaperone. On Sunday morning, I believe it is the last of the series, An Adult Ed on Hasidism, and I believe the words of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov are going to be studied at 9:30 Sunday morning online. And Rabbi Cari mentioned this 8 p.m. on Wednesday night. This is sort of late breaking news. The town of Winchester will gather in the Winchester Common for a vigil for peace for Ukraine, 8 p.m. right down here. And are there any other announcements that I'm forgetting? All right, we are going to end tonight on page 45 with the words of Adon Olam, and we are so pleased to have you back up here, Lee, with us, and with you, your brother Artie, whose bar mitzvah is November, coming up in November of 2022. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasai, V'chepso Kol, Azar Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, Ve'acharei Yiglot HaKol, Levado Yemlok Nora Adon Olam, Ve'hu Haya, Ve'hu Hoved, Ve'hu Yeh V'tifara Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa V'chepso Kol, Azar Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, Ve'hu Echad V'yein Sheni, La'am Shelo La'achbira Adon Olam, Ve'li Reshit, Ve'li Tachlit, Ve'lo Ha'oz V'ha'misra Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa, V'chepso Kol, Azar Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, Ve'hu Eli, V'chayko Ali, V'tzorchav Li V'etzara Adon Olam, Ve'hu Nisi, Umanos Li, Menakosi B'yom Ekra Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa V'chepso Kol, Azar Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, Be'ado Avtid Ruchi, Ve'eti Sham Ve'a'ira Adon Olam, Ve'im Ruchi Yavi'ati, Adonai Li V'lo Ira Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa V'chepso Kol, Azar Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam. Shabbat Shalom, Mazel Tov, and words we have not said for many a moon. Let us meet downstairs for Odeg, for Kiddush and Motzi. And Shabbat Shalom, Zoomers. We can turn around and wave to our Zoom community.